What if I told you that nearly a century ago, one man dared to imagine a metropolis that broke every law of architecture we knew? Pause for a moment and picture it. A city where skyscrapers don't just stand. They intertwine, their forms braided like giant organic towers. Bridges hang suspended in mid-air without visible supports, while vertical farm towers pierce the clouds, feeding millions. When this concept was first revealed, the world didn't just laugh, it recoiled. They called the architect a madman. And yet today, fragments of that impossible dream are slowly, undeniably becoming real in our modern cities. This is the forgotten story of Elias Vance, the visionary who designed a city the world swore could never exist. The full scope of Vance's vision stayed hidden for decades, not in a museum but in dusty municipal archives. Historians uncovered fragile hand-drawn blueprints, a technological and artistic anomaly. They weren't just building plans. They described entire self-sustaining ecosystems. Vance called his design Aethelgard. It mapped out a flawless, closed-loop existence, vertical hydroponic farms to feed whole districts, advanced atmospheric filters to recycle city air, and revolutionary energy loops that turned waste into clean, endless power. This wasn't fantasy. It was practical engineering created in an era when the world still relied on coal. For some, he was an unrecognized genius. For his contemporaries, he was a delusional architect lost in a vision too big for the real world. The line between visionary and fanatic had never been thinner. Elias Vance wasn't content to let his masterpiece remain on paper. His life became an all-consuming crusade to build. He launched campaign after campaign for funding, pitched skeptical investors, and even convinced a small European town to test parts of his design. But the 1920s and 30s simply didn't have the tools he needed. He required materials that could withstand impossible stresses, computer modeling that hadn't been invented, and construction methods that sounded like science fiction. Every attempt to lay the first stones of Aethelgard collapsed, not because of a flaw in his vision, but because technology couldn't match his imagination. He drained his fortune, sacrificed relationships, and gave every waking moment to a dream that refused to materialize. He died forgotten, seen as a failure. The city remained unfinished, a ghost of what could have been. But the story didn't end in an archive. Decades later, a new generation of architects and futurists rediscovered Vance's journals and sketches. They studied his bold geometries and engineering through a 21st century lens. What they realized was stunning. With today's tools, Vance's impossible city is finally within reach. Artificial intelligence, advanced composite materials stronger than steel but lighter than wood, 3D printing, and robotic construction have given us the missing pieces. Digital simulations now allow us to walk through the streets of Aethelgard. Art and architectural installations around the globe proudly showcase his cityscapes, bringing his once-forgotten vision vividly to life. His failure became a blueprint for our future. This raises a powerful question. What if Elias Vance were alive today, armed with the technology of 2025? Would we be living in floating eco-cities or spiral metropolises piercing the clouds? His sacrifice forces us to wonder what truly limits human ingenuity. Is it physics, money, politics, or the limits of our imagination itself? Perhaps the impossible cities of tomorrow are already being drawn today by visionaries the world won't recognize for another century. And maybe, just maybe, Elias Vance was never mad at all. He was simply living 100 years ahead of his time.